first to Labor's shared equity housing plan, which is such a thoroughly and diabolically dumb policy that one could be mistaken for thinking the Greens came up with it. There was a time when such ill-considered tomfoolery would only come from a minor party with no chance of governing. But Labor has launched a policy so harebrained that Adam Bandt must be feeling jealous. There are, of course, concerns with such schemes only pushing up housing prices further, but there are greater issues with sharing ownership of your home with the government. It's not a good idea when proposed by state or territory governments, and certainly not a good idea when pushed by the financially inept federal Labor Party, which has not returned a surplus since 1989. Yes, it's been 33 years since Labor managed to deliver a federal budget surplus. Labor's key housing policy is scant on detail because the more you learn about it, the more holes you can pick in the scheme. Under the $329 million scheme for now, qualifying home buyers would have up to 40% of their home for new property or 30% for existing property paid for and owned by the government. Now, it's one thing to have the bank own most of your house, but something else for the government to own a percentage. Unlike a mortgage, the government's ownership is calculated as a percentage of the home value, not the initial dollar amount invested plus interest, meaning when the property is sold, the government would take its portion of whatever capital gains have been made. A massive bureaucratic mess awaits anyone involved in the scheme who does any home improvements or extends the property. A valuation must be performed if you renovate, so the government doesn't reap the benefits of your hard work and expenditure when you sell. But anyone who understands the property market knows all too well a valuation performed when improvements are undertaken can be meaningless 2 years or 20 years later. A pool you may put in may increase your property by 5% at the time it's installed. 20 years later, the impact of that pool may be 15%, or it may be negative 5% if it makes a subdivision more difficult or more expensive, for example. How do we determine who gets what when a sale takes place years after capital improvements are undertaken? How do we determine the value added by those who do not complete large-scale renovations but maintain their property with regular painting and planting and general loving care? Or do homeowners have to complete a formal valuation after every single improvement, whether it's something small like a new air conditioner, new carpets, new fence? I mean, can you just see the mess they've created here? The only redeeming feature of this idiotic policy is that it won't be inflicted on every Australian, unlike the monstrously stupid energy policies of Labor and their ideological bedfellows, the Greens and the Climate 200 independents, fake independents. This policy gives voters, though, I think, a very important insight into modern Labor. They may be running a small target strategy by pretending they are fiscal conservatives who will mirror the coalition from border protection to economic management. But once in power, we can expect a very different beast indeed. Labor has learned well from losing the unlosable election in 2019. They know not to scare the electorate with a detailed policy platform. But their shared equity plan gives a worrying insight into the hard left values of modern Labor.